Thank you for browsing page 121. Today we're going to jump into the next issue of the Dragon, 101. Dragon issue number 101 from September 1985. I always love this cover. So let's go inside and take a look. Thrills and Spells for Talisman, the Magical Quest game. This is from Games Workshop, the folks that went on to bring us Warhammer. Then we have Encounter the Many Realms and Varied Cultures of Middle-earth. So we get a nice look from Iron Crown Enterprises, some modules based in Tolkien's Middle-earth. I always like Iron Crown stuff. Charlottesville, from Pennsylvania. And there's a table of contents for this fine issue of the Dragon, and letters to the editor, and an editorial from Kim Mullen. Finishing out the letters to the editor, which actually finishes later in the magazine, and then we got the World Gamers Guide. This is if you're going to travel around the world 40 years ago, you could find somebody to play your games with. How big is a hunting horror? Find out with Fragments of Fear, the second Cthulhu companion. So Call of Cthulhu was around, growing in popularity. And then we have an ad for the Sea Elves, a new tribe for ElfQuest. There you go. And these are from Cassium. And then we have, finishing out the letters to the editor, and we have the forum, which is another form of letters to the editor, and an ad for Hyborian War. Imperial Conquest in the Age of Conan. Play-by-mail game by Reality Simulations out of Tempe, Arizona. And then Battle System. Yes, Battle System. The very first one. And we have some modules that were released specifically for use with this Battle System, first edition. X10 for basic D&D, Red Arrow. DL8, Dragons of War. And H1, Bloodstone Pass for Forgotten Realms. And then we get an update from the Chief about the past, the present, and a bit of the future from Gary Gygax. This is unfortunately just before Gygax got ousted at TSR. Just One Little Neighborhood in Lankmar, City of Adventure from TSR. I bought some of these. I tried to roll them into my campaign, my core campaign. I tried to do a few games set in Lankmar. It didn't land with our group. I didn't hang on to them. All About the Kender, a long look at the little people of Krynn by Roger Moore. The Kender were an interesting take on halflings in that they can't feel fear, and they're curious, and they also believe that if they see something shiny and want to borrow it, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not stealing, I'm just borrowing it forever. And to continue on our Kender, and finishing out our article on Kender, we take a look at Which Alien is Dangerous in Traveler from Game Designers Workshop in Bloomington, Illinois. These are excellent modules. The Aslan, Kukri, and Vargir. These are just really nice. I love some of these, and a lot of current Traveler owes a lot to these modules. Planet by the Numbers, a system for tailoring challenges to characters. Yes, hate to break it to you folks, but D&D is nothing but math. If you learn how to balance the math, you can balance your encounters and do quite well. And then we have an ad for Wizzy Systems, Alti Systems from Nichols Services in Columbus, Georgia. What do these guys do? They just, looks like they just hooked you up with, wait, it's a new manual, complete charts, okay, just a better way to play D&D. For King and Country, an alignment system based on cause and effect. I do like, we don't do a bunch with player backstories when characters are new, but I do like when there's some rationale for an alignment. And it can be as simple as somebody saying, I've always wanted to play a lawful good fighter. Okay, great. Go nuts. You know, I just like that, and I like this alignment system based on cause and effect. Gives you a core way for a core reason for your character to be the alignment they are. We have a nice ad for Star Ace, the role-playing game from Pace Setter out of Delavan, Wisconsin. I never played Star Ace. I saw the stuff on the shelves, but at the time I was playing Traveler, and we were playing a little bit. Well, I was reading Star Frontiers, we weren't really playing it yet, but I never read Star Frontiers, or I'm sorry, Star Ace. If anybody has, and I'd like to know what they thought of the system. It's always looked interesting to me. The penultimate mysteries are revealed in the fourth part of the Ultimate Fantasy Game, D&D Master Set from TSR. Continuing out our article on alignment. We go with the alignment article, and then we get an ad for Flashing Blades from Fantasy Games Unlimited. These guys brought a space opera too. They advertised a lot in Dragon. Finishing out our article, we go to the roll of books. Fantasy and SF stories for gamers to savor. I always read this column because sometimes I would pick up the book based on what the column had to say. I guess that's what a review is for, right? And then we got an ad for Fantasy Newsflash. 39 great new molds with 100 fantastic characters from the Duncan Company in Calvert, Texas. And an ad for GameTown. Everything in games and puzzles. And these guys were in San Diego, California. I don't know if they're still around. Patton vs. Rommel in the ultimate game of desert conflict by TSR. TSR was trying to bring back the bookshelf games that a lot of us played before D&D. The Avalon Hill games, GDW had a bunch of them. They're just, some of these were really fun. I played a number of them, started in grammar school with a buddy of mine. We started playing some of these in about 73, 74, and I enjoyed them. We played those off and on through high school, and then just after high school is when I found D&D. Charging isn't cheap. How to make and fix rods, staves, and wands. I dog-eared the heck out of this article back in the day. Had some really good tips on how to recharge stuff. Continuing on our article there. Possibly the greatest dragon you'll ever see. And this is from Rel Partha in Cincinnati, Ohio. And this guy was $50. That's a lot of money in 1985. Still a decent chunk of change. Continuing on our article on recharging rod staves and wands. And then we have an ad for Illuminati for Adventure Systems out of Houston, Texas, part of the Steve Jackson game. And then Cyworld from Fantasy Games Unlimited, role-playing game of psionic powers. Continuing out our article on recharging. Out of the legendary mists of time comes an adventure so incredible that one module wasn't enough to contain it. The Temple of Elemental Evil. T1 through 4. That was so cool to finally get our hands on T2, 3, and 4. We'd had T1. It was one of the first modules I ever was a player in. One of the early modules I DM'd, and of course one of the first ones I read. I always loved T1, Village of Hamlet. And it was neat to get the rest of the temple. And then we have from TSR, the Art of Dungeons & Dragons fantasy game. So you got a collection of all the various art. It's pretty neat. From the dusty tomes of powerful sorcerers, it comes at last. Unearthed Arcana. Yay! I like Unearthed Arcana. I always have. It was a much-needed shot in the arm for D&D at the time, and I know it had its flaws and it should have been play-tested better, but I still really like that book. The latest superhero RPG. Done cleverly, but definitely complex. See, they did a DC, and there's your DC heroes. I never played DC heroes. Saw them on the shelves all the time. We were playing Champions at the time. Loved DC. Collected a ton of DC comics. We stayed with Champs. And then continuing out for the DC review, we get a look at Dragonbone Electronic Dice and Dragon Skin. These are book covers. And these guys were out of Lamont, Illinois, which is not too far from my house. Fantasy Unlimited Reversible Hooded Cape, $66. Allow 4 to 8 weeks for delivery. $66 is a lot of money. Earthwood, Dawn of the Ancients. It's a game of diplomacy, cunning, diplomacy, strategy, and deceit. Dawn of the Ancients, and these guys were out of Miami, Florida. This is a play-by-mail. Creature Catalog 3. I loved Creature Catalog. This is one of my favorite features they did in the Dragon. Little mini monster manuals. And by the mid-'80s, I was working at a place that had a copier. So I was able to copy this and carry it around. I use the Avari a lot. These are demonic bats. Just saw all kinds of fun monsters in here. I loved Dragon. Back in the day, it was so much fun. Good section. You had it in the middle, so you could bend the staples and pull this out if you wanted to. Obviously, I did not do that, but you could if you wanted to. Carry it around as a supplement to your Monster Manual or Monster Manual 2 or Fiend Folio. There we go. I like that. Coming attractions from TSR. What's coming out? What were we excited about back in 85? Well, T1 through 4, Temple of Elemental Evil. I was very excited about that. It was $15. I remember that. Dragonlance Chronicles Volume 3. I read them. Dragons of Deceit. I liked them back in the day. It was exciting to have some fiction for D&D. Soulforge Endless Quest game. Top Secret Companion game expansion. Some more stuff for Basic. The Art of D&D. Amazing Stories. Not a ton for D&D itself. Conan the Mercenary. Conan Adventure game. They had the license to Conan because of the movies in the 80s. Indiana Jones, they had that license too. The Game Buyer's Guide, I'm not even familiar with that. And that's about it. Coming retractions. In Dragon 99, we proudly announced the impending release of Proton Fire. Well, it didn't happen, folks. The truth is that the original information was prepared and printed. We decided there wasn't a big market for a standalone robot game. So instead, we're repackaging it as a Star Frontiers game accessory. That's interesting. That's why I never saw Proton Fire on the shelves. It didn't make it to the shelves. Sky Realms of Jarun. Leave your world behind. And this is from Sky Realms Publishing out of Berkeley, California. Continuing out the update from the chief and the forum letters to the editor. We have an ad for Oriental Adventures for AD&D. Now under construction, new realms of adventure for AD&D coming in November. Watch for it. I liked OA. A lot of stuff to use out of OA. Continuing out our letters to the editor, the forum, and then write on. Go ahead and write us about an article. Daredevils and Lands of Adventure from Fantasy Games Unlimited out of Roslyn, New York. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Play by Mail. And this was sent to Charlotte, North Carolina. If you wanted to play by mail AD&D, by 85 or so, our groups were starting to get older and move on. People were falling in love, getting married, moving away for jobs, stuff like that. So 85, we saw kind of a transition. 86 was a bigger transition year, but 85 was still pretty big. And Adventuring to Go. This is some nice fiction. Don't remember reading it. Citadel Magic Users, created for Canadians. Let's see if I've got any of these guys. I do not. From the Raffin Company out of Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. Are you missing a Dragon magazine in your lair? Well, here you go. You can order it through TSR and for cover price too. It's a pretty good deal. Aries Science Fiction Gaming Section. I always love the Science Fiction Gaming Section. Aries has its own table of contents, its own editorial. And then we have Starships and Star Soldiers, miniatures and science fiction gaming. These were hard to come by in the 80s. There were not many science fiction figures. We used various D&D ones that didn't look too D&D-ish, but it was hard to find them. And then finishing out the article, we have Sorry, Wrong Dimension, Dimensional Travel for Superpowered Gaming. Kind of neat. Continuing out that article, Anne McAfee's Dragon Riders of Pern Come to Life from Nova Game Designs out of Manchester, Connecticut. This is a game versus game kind of thing, a game book versus game book. Battletech started out like that. The Marvel File, Return to Asgard. We get a look at Beta Ray Bill, also called Beta Ray Thor. I like Beta Ray Bill a lot. Sif, Thor's erstwhile girlfriend. Continuing that out, and then we have an ad for 1986 Marvel Superheroes Calendar. Hurry and get yours now. Available at local hobby shops by Mayfair Games. And an ad for Villains and Vigilantes for Fantasy Games Unlimited. Citadel Miniatures is pleased to announce the release of the Lord of the Rings gaming miniatures. These are actual Gandalf, Legolas, Bjorn. Pretty neat. These were from Games Workshop out of Columbia, Maryland, but really out of Great Britain. Out of the Sun, the Man Machines of Gamma World Gaming. These were kind of neat. They are AATAAVs, Airborne All-Terrain Armored Attack Vehicle. These were big Robotech robots, and they had survived, and they being the people that ran these machines survived, and they pop up in this article for Gamma World. I like the prose that comes along with this too. There's a little prose about it. The AATAAVs versus the Death Machines, kind of neat. The Stellar Diocese, the clergy in the Traveler universe. I use the heck out of this article too. Clergy in Traveler ends up only being important if you're running a story that involves some kind of theocracy, somebody, you know, being ruled by religion, or you get the street preacher and stuff like that. I've done many game hooks where there's a preacher on the corner telling his stellar divinity word, and the adventure ensues. Continuing out the article there. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. These were comic book sensation, and they were compatible with the Heroes Unlimited system. And Justice Machine, I remember them from Palladium Books. I remember the Justice Machine. They had some pretty good comics in the 80s. Convention calendar. Get in your time machine and go back 40 years, and you can go to some of these fine conventions. And then an ad for Amazing Science Fiction Stories. Amazing TSR was publishing it at the time. They were trying very hard to become a publishing house. Gamers Guides. These are kind of personal ads for stuff you want to sell, or even sometimes if you're looking for game, you could advertise in here. Finishing out the letters to the editor. And then the index to advertisers. And then Wormy. Gotta love Wormy. Dave Trampier. We get 2 pages of Wormy. We get 2 pages of Dragon merch, which I always enjoyed. And then StarQuest, Larry Elmore, 3 pages. And ends up with an ad for Paranoia, a role-playing game of a darkly humorous future from West End Games in New York, New York. Played a little bit of Paranoia. Current version of Paranoia is being brought to us by Mongoose Publishing. I talked to my guys and said, you know, I asked them if they wanted to get into Paranoia, and they weren't real interested. We don't generally play games where we're in opposition to each other. Maybe it's just a limited tabletop game, Spellfire, things like that. But usually in role-playing, we don't. Space Master, the challenge of the future awaits. I liked Space Master's universe. I thought the rules were way too clunky, and this is from Iron Crown Enterprises out of Charlottesville, Virginia. But I liked ICE stuff. I have a ton of Space Master stuff. So there you have it. That's just a brief look at Dragon number 101 from September 1985. What were you doing then? I know what I was doing. I was working very hard in a job that wasn't going great. But 85 was still a really, really good year. I still fondly remember it. But yeah, leave some comments below about what you were doing and, you know, what your gaming situation was in 85. As I said, mine was starting to transition a little bit. We had some people move away, but in 85 we actually had 1 or 2 people move back into our campaign, so that was kind of interesting. But go ahead and leave comments below, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, tell your friends, let's keep growing the channel. Take a look at the Patreon, see if you can help me out there. And don't forget, I've got the free PDF of Drake the Shape Changer from my video a few days ago. It's still available through my Patreon, so go ahead and take a look at that. But that's all I've got. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.